Each night, typically multiple times a night, we do something incredible. From the comfort of our beds, without even moving, we travel to another world, the realm of dreams. Here, the most wonderful, the most horrifying, and, let's be honest, the most bizarre thoughts our subconscious minds can come up with are turned into lifelike adventures, most of which we forget within minutes of awakening, but some of which stick with us and can even greatly impact our waking lives. Very roughly estimated, we spend about 7% of our lives total dreaming, an average of about 6 years. Why? Why are our minds wired to take us on these nightly adventures? Furthermore, what do our dreams mean? What do they say about us? Why do you wake up feeling that you're falling, or dream that your teeth are falling out so often? Have you ever had something happen in real life, and couldn't quite shake the feeling that you had dreamt of it before? And what's going on with things like lucid dreaming, sleepwalking, and night terrors? Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to Fire of Learning. In this video, we will answer all these questions and more. If you're getting deja vu, it's not because you dreamed about this video before seeing it. It's because we made a documentary about dreams in 2019, but have decided to redo it to improve both the entertainment and information quality. Before we begin, we would like to thank the original patrons on that video, Avast User, Virtual Happiness Syndrome, Evgeny Zakharov, Zach and Danny, Shimmerzen, and Gabriel Lund, as well as Bill Hampton, for being our most recent supporter on Patreon. They join these supporters listed here who help to make videos like this possible. Now then, let's get to it. You're a teenager again, back in high school. Why and how you don't even question. You are simply there, in the school halls among your old classmates and teachers. It's the first day of the year, and you have to find your history class, which is of course taught by your manager at your current job. However, you're having some trouble finding it. You're wandering the busy, endless halls trying to read the numbers and words on the doors, but they aren't quite legible. You're alone now. Everyone is in class except for you. Almost a whole school year has gone by, and you haven't made it to history class once. You completely forgot about it. This is terrible. This is a disaster. You're going to have to repeat it. You're going to fail senior year, and you won't graduate. It's night now. Everyone's gone home, but you're still in the school, alone. Or are you alone? You can't see it, but you feel the presence. Something else there, aware of you. You look over and find it. A faceless figure coming towards you. Its intentions you can feel are hostile. You try to run, to fight back, but you can't. It's as if you're stuck or paralyzed. Just as the figure is nearly upon you, you wake up. Does this sound familiar? Though we've made this dream up, we've based it on the kinds of things people all over the world report dreaming about each night. Being back in the past, contending with a fear of failure, searching for something you just can't find, being chased or attacked and finding yourself paralyzed. All of this being deeply serious in the moment, but upon awakening, realizing it was all quite absurd. You could call it a fairly typical dream. Dreams are rarely just something like sequences of random, meaningless, disconnected images and sounds and such things. They're often, not always, but often lifelike experiences which are perceived in the first person. You're often doing something in your dreams, an active participant in them. Dreams tend to involve people, places, concerns, and experiences familiar to us in waking life, though they are often altered and interchanged in unusual ways. Indeed, though dreams can feel incredibly lifelike, they certainly aren't always reflections of reality, generally being a bit, or very, surreal, fantastic, nonsensical, phantasmagoric. Often, dreams strongly provoke our most basic emotions: fear, anger, sadness, embarrassment, joy, amusement, amazement. The study of dreams is called onirology, from the ancient Greek word for dream, oneiron. Dreams have captivated humanity for all history, but it is only within the past few centuries, and especially century, that science has been able to make significant progress into understanding what is going on in our minds when we dream. To understand why we dream, it would be helpful to start by understanding why we even sleep in the first place. Unfortunately, this is itself a bit of a mystery. It's very clear that we need sleep. We spend about a third of our day, and thus our lives, asleep. Trying to get around sleeping can be detrimental to our health and happiness, especially after long periods of deprivation. Scientists have determined that many crucial things happen during sleep. The body heals and regenerates. Tissue is repaired and the immune system is bolstered. More importantly for the purposes of this video, there's quite a bit of activity that goes on in the brain during sleep. The brain is never truly quite off, in the sense of complete inactivity during sleep. In fact, in some phases especially, it's quite active, comparable to being awake in fact, though the brain's activity does change when you're asleep, as you would expect. Sleep seems to be crucial for organizing memories and information in our heads. The brain is hard at work, strengthening what is deemed important to preserve it for the long term and discarding what is deemed useless. That will be important later on. While this explains why sleep is important, it doesn't explain why it was ever necessary in the first place. Why is it best to enter an 8-hour period of dormancy to do these things? Why aren't we wired to keep going 24/7 and regenerate, heal, consolidate memories, etc. while awake, or even in some kind of conscious, vigilant resting period? That's what no one is completely sure of, though there are several interesting ideas. It's counterintuitive to think that lying unconscious in the pre-modern world, particularly in the wilderness, for hours at a time on a regular basis would be a good idea. But sleep is necessary not just for humans, but many, it seems most animals. Determining how many creatures sleep is complicated because it depends on how sleep is defined. We won't get into all of that here, but almost all animals at least go through something like sleep. Scientists also believe that sleep is a very ancient idea. Not only did the dinosaurs likely sleep, but creatures that came long before them seem to have as well. The fact that sleep is so common and persistent suggests it's a winning strategy. Tell that to your boss the next time you're late for work. You were caught up focusing on a winning strategy. Maybe they like the sound of it so much they ask you to get back to it. Regardless of why we sleep, human sleep works like this. There are two main phases of sleep: REM and NREM. NREM sleep is further divided into 3 stages: NREM 1, NREM 2, and NREM 3. Going through each of the 4 stages is called a sleep cycle. Adults go through one sleep cycle about once every 90 to 120 minutes, and so we have about 4 or 5 sleep cycles a night. REM stands for Rapid Eye Movement. NREM then stands for Non-Rapid Eye Movement. Why? Well, you may have noticed that when people sleep, for certain periods, their eyes will dart around randomly. This is where REM sleep gets its name. It's a strong indication that an individual is in that phase. We'll explain why this happens in a minute. Our sleeping experience is a bit different in each sleep stage, so much so that you might actually even be able to tell which phase you or someone else was in when awakened. Let's now go through each stage and see how much you can relate to. Let's go to sleep, and more importantly, enter the world of dreams. NREM 1 is the first phase. This is a light sleep, which marks the transition from wakefulness to sleep. You may not even feel fully asleep in this phase, but your awareness of the external world begins to drift. It is usually in this phase, or NREM 2, that you might experience that sudden falling sensation that startles you awake. This is called a hypnic jerk. They are real jerks, aren't they? It's not clear why it happens. It probably has something to do with the transition into the paralysis we experience in deeper sleep. Perhaps the brain precociously testing the muscles to see if we're there yet. Or it's our reflexes misinterpreting relaxing as falling. It is also in NREM 1 that we might experience hallucinations, called hypnagogic hallucinations. You might see things, like squiggly lines or something like TV static, or hear things, like voices or banging that isn't there. This is also common and normal. For the record, hallucinations upon waking are called hypnopompic hallucinations. But do we dream in NREM 1? You might have heard that scientists say that it takes about an hour and a half before we start dreaming at night. But if you've ever dreamt during a quick 15-minute nap, you might be inclined to question this. And you'd be exactly right. But this is not exactly what scientists say. Dreaming is possible in any stage of sleep, including NREM 1. However, what scientists say is that the most vivid, story-like, emotional dreams are what are typically common later on in sleep, about an hour and a half in. We'll see why this is the case in a moment. As far as NREM1 goes, you may very well have dreams in this phase, but they tend to be, again, much less vivid and lifelike. If you wake a person in this stage, they might even call it thinking, albeit disorganized, unusual thinking. After about 5 to 10 minutes, you transition into NREM2. You are now fully asleep, although not deeply yet. Your heart rate and breathing slow and your body temperature lowers slightly. You will spend about half your time asleep in NREM2. Again, you may dream in this phase, but this tends to be more like an unconscious thinking or daydreaming. Not quite lifelike dreams just yet. We then transition into NREM3, also called N3 or slow wave sleep because of the readings on electroencephalograms, or EEGs, in this phase. NREM3 accounts for about 20% of your time asleep. This is deep sleep, the deepest sleep, in fact. People are hardest to awaken in this phase, and when they do wake up, they're most likely to be confused and foggy for a moment. It is typically the most restful phase, when the body focuses most on healing and regeneration. Dreams are reported the least often in NREM3, but they can happen, and they tend to be more like the unconscious mental wandering of NREM1 and 2. NREM3 is more famous for the other unusual things that can happen during it, including a number of prominent parasomnias. Parasomnias are, simply put, unusual behaviors and experiences that occur during sleep. An example is somnambulism, which is a fancy Latin way of saying sleepwalking. We might assume that sleepwalkers are acting out their dreams, but believe it or not, they usually aren't. Wake a sleepwalker, and they often have no recollection of dreaming and no idea what they were doing, even if they appear to have had a clear goal while sleepwalking. Now, some sleepwalkers do act out their dreams, but that is typically a very different situation from standard sleepwalking. We'll look more at that later. Another example of an NREM3 parasomnia is night terrors. Night terrors are not the same thing as nightmares. The term nightmare is not universally defined, but it is basically a term for a bad dream. A night terror, believe it or not, is not closely associated with dreaming. A true night terror is when someone seems to enter into an intense panic in their sleep, even to the point of screaming and thrashing around. Wake them, and, like with standard sleepwalking, they often won't remember a dream. We'll talk more about parasomnias later, but for now, let's transition to the final stage of sleep. After NREM3, we briefly re-enter NREM2, but then enter REM sleep. This is where the real dreaming begins. REM sleep is very different from the other three stages, which is why it's distinguished as its own phase. It is sometimes referred to as paradoxical sleep. This is because your heart rate, breathing, and temperature pick back up, and on EEGs, your brain activity appears very similar to how it is when you are awake. And yet, you're fast asleep, and in fact, difficult to awaken. Indeed, certain areas of the brain can even display more activity than during wakefulness, namely those concerned with memory, emotion, and vision. Something very important is going on in those regions during REM, and therefore, perhaps, dreams. REM is the phase in which someone is most likely to report having been in a dream when awakened, about 82% of the time, according to a 2000 meta-analysis to be exact, compared to 42% in the NREM stages. Moreover, REM dreams are also typically more vivid, lifelike, emotionally intense, and longer. In essence, roughly speaking, an NREM dream is more like unconscious daydreaming. A REM dream is more like you're actually there. Indeed, during REM dreams, the subconscious mind is essentially convinced that you are there. Your motor cortex even, a main region of the brain associated with movement, is quite active during REM. This indicates that you are quite literally trying to physically move in the same ways that you are in your dreams. Why then do you not get up and act out your dreams? Because of what's called REM atonia. Your brainstem specifically paralyzes you in this stage so that you don't do much beyond subtle twitching. This is very helpful in preventing you from jumping out your window under the belief that you're skydiving with a parachute. REM atonia is why you get that feeling that you can't run or move your arms or legs in a dream. That tends to occur towards the end of dreams, shortly before you wake up, doesn't it? When you're becoming aware of yourself and your surroundings, but aren't quite awake yet. Is it possible for this paralysis to not take effect, and for someone to literally act out their dreams while asleep? Yes, it is. Is the opposite possible? To be awake with this paralysis still in effect? Yes, it is. We'll talk more about those situations later. As the name suggests, the eyes are exempted from this paralysis. As such, when a person's eyes move around during REM sleep, they are quite literally moving in response to dream content, as if they're actually there. For the record, the diaphragm is also exempted, so that you can breathe, because that's important. An area of the brain that is not very active during REM, however, is the prefrontal cortex, a primary area concerned with logical reasoning. This is a big part of why dreams are so bizarre and unusual, and why you don't question them in the moment. We spend about 20% of our sleep in REM, entering it 4 times throughout the night. Once the first stage of REM is completed, you go back into NREM 1 or 2, maybe even lightly awakening and then going back to sleep, and then the cycle starts over. The time spent in each phase changes throughout the night. In earlier sleep, you tend to spend more time in NREM 3, which is why sleepwalking, talking, night terrors, etc. are more often an early middle of the night thing. As sleep progresses, you spend more time in REM, which is why you may feel that you have more dreams in the early morning. In a full night's sleep, the first phase of REM will be about 10 minutes long, the last an hour. When dreams are reported in NREM 3, it is often more towards the end of sleep, likely because of the increasing influence of REM. Interestingly, the time spent in each stage changes as we age, as does the amount of sleep we need. Newborn babies spend about half their time sleeping in REM, which gradually decreases throughout childhood to, as we said, about 20% in adulthood. That is another clue about the purpose that REM may serve. As all of this suggests, most people dream every night, multiple times a night. In total, we spend about 2 hours a night dreaming. So why do so many people feel that they can't remember any of their dreams, or even that they don't dream at all? For someone to remember every dream they have every night is essentially unheard of. Most people forget the vast majority of their dreams. We tend to only remember them by chance or if they make an impression on us. And of those, typically those of the early morning, before awakening for the day. Anyone who has ever tried to meticulously record their dreams will likely have realized that they do indeed dream more than they thought. However, anyone who has done this also knows they have to record at least brief notes about it quickly, ideally immediately upon waking up, because the memory of the dream rapidly begins fading, even if you consciously acknowledge it and tell yourself you'll remember it. You can focus on a dream and remember it perfectly well when you wake up, and have lost it completely by breakfast. Our brains produce very little norepinephrine or serotonin, neurotransmitters involved in forming long-term memories, during REM, and regions of the brain concerned with making memories are themselves typically occupied doing other things during dreams rather than forming new memories. The brain puts little emphasis on remembering dreams and might even be specifically designed to forget them. Dreams can be so lifelike, unusual, and emotionally provocative that if we retained clear memories of them, it could easily cause problems. The point is that almost everyone has a heavily dream-filled night, but forgets the vast majority, or all of it, upon awakening in the morning, to the point where many people wonder if they even do dream. That being said, it would seem that some people really simply do not dream at all. This is a rare and poorly understood circumstance, but it seems that this can be a result of certain neurological issues or something disrupting sleep, especially REM sleep. We now have a basic understanding of how sleep works, how dreams fit into that process, and some clues as to what is going on in our brains during dreaming. Let's move on now to ask, what do people typically dream about? But before we do that, we would like to briefly mention that we hope you are enjoying this video so far, and that all of this talk about sleep hasn't put you to sleep. If you like what we do, please consider subscribing to support our channel, and keep up with more videos like this in the future. Now back to the video. It's your wedding day. There you are, the groom, standing up at the altar in front of all your family and friends. Here Comes the Bride begins to play, and accordingly, the bride begins to walk down the aisle. But then, she stops, and gives you an odd look. You then notice the audience begin to react strongly to you, some laughing, some shocked. You turn to look at a randomly placed mirror in the church. Oh no. You're wearing swim trunks and a snorkel. Not even a shirt. You forgot the suit and tie. How did you do this? Oh no. This isn't happening. This is not happening. This is... You wake up. It wasn't happening. Just a dream. Our dreams are generally unique to us, drawn from our own personal waking experiences, thoughts, and emotions, but many strikingly similar themes are common within cultures and even across the world. Being inappropriately dressed and/or humiliated in a public setting is one very common example. Various surveys from around the world have also found numerous others, such as falling or being on the verge of falling, flying, being chased or pursued, being late, being in school or work, failing exams, someone alive in waking life dying, or someone already deceased being alive again, romantic experiences, feeling an invisible presence in a room, discovering a new room or location in an area already familiar to you, repeatedly trying to do something, your teeth falling out, being frozen with fear, creatures which provoke fear in particular, namely insects, spiders, rats, and snakes, being pregnant, your hair being cut, and of course, combinations of these themes. These seem to be the most common dream themes, or at least, as researchers stress, the most commonly remembered. You might notice that there are more negative examples here than positive. Indeed, as various studies and surveys suggest, dreams are, unfortunately, a bit more often negative than positive, even for those who are perfectly happy and healthy. Interestingly, our own poll on the subject suggested that no strong emotion was more common than either emotion, possibly because of the influence of NREM dreams, and because some dreams really are just surreal, strange experiences without much emotional impact. But we indeed also found that negative emotions are more common than positive, although only slightly so in our poll's case. Other analyses suggest more prevalence of negativity. Beginning in the 1940s, American psychologist Calvin S. Hall began to research dreams, eventually developing a quantitative coding system used to analyze their content. He became one of the first to systematically study and categorize dreams in a scientific way. At the time of his death, Hall had collected over 50,000 dream reports from the public. In 1966, he and Robert Van de Castle published the book The Content Analysis of Dreams. The book is out of print and hard to find, but his method of analyzing the content of dreams, the Hall-Van de Castle system, is still used by oneirologists to this day. Hall, likewise, found that negative dreams outweighed the positive in both industrialized and non-industrialized countries, with the most common emotion felt during dreams being anxiety. It seems the emotions felt during dreams are influenced by the emotions we feel in waking life, with periods of stress increasing the frequency of bad dreams. The emotions felt in dreams, positive or negative, tend to be strong, sometimes stronger than we would feel if we were actually in the situations of which we are dreaming. Mundane things can be amazing or terrible. Dreams do often focus on emotionally provocative situations, however. Often, dreams jump right to these situations, unless they tend to feel like they begin in the middle of a story. The example we used at the beginning of this section is a good example. Why you're getting married, why you're in swim trunks, maybe even who the person you're marrying is. Nothing leading up to this incident was established. The dream simply starts in the middle of things, and likely no one was surprised by this. Likewise, not always, but it is common to wake up at the climax of a dream. The most intense moment, the height of the embarrassment of being in swim trunks. There's often not a resolution, no conclusion, certainly no end credits, and almost never a post-credits scene foreshadowing the next night's dream. We might even wake up dissatisfied or annoyed with our dreams because they are left unresolved. This is interesting. Rather than dreams being something like a movie, it's as if the mind is focusing on specific circumstances and scenarios. It doesn't necessarily need to construct the before or after. It is worth noting, though, that imagined scenarios can sometimes be like this in waking life. If you were to be asked, what would you do if you were lost at sea? Your mind immediately jumps to that moment, automatically fills in the details based on prior knowledge and experiences, and focuses on what you would do in that situation. Sometimes we repeatedly have the same or similar dreams. These are called recurring dreams, or often, as these especially tend to be negative, recurring nightmares. Research suggests most people experience recurring dreams at least once in their lives. There is a tendency for these to focus on things which disturb or burden us in waking life. This is seen most obviously in sufferers of PTSD, who will often have recurring nightmares about the events which traumatized them. We mentioned that dreams tend to be irrational and surreal. More specifically, they often involve unique combinations of things and unlikely ideas of which we would never conceive in waking life. Your childhood home might sit in the neighborhood you currently live in. Your manager at your current job might be your high school teacher. Your husband might be introducing you to his nephew who we never mentioned before, a polar bear from Ireland. You might step outside your bedroom into a totally new world, completely unfamiliar to you. It's as if the brain is in a kind of extreme creativity mode, an unhinged one where things are randomly, unrealistically thrown together. Likewise, dreams can be highly unstable. Characters appear, disappear, or are inexplicably replaced by other characters. Your brother's place is taken by your neighbor mid-dream, and the dream may even continue without you noticing, with your neighbor in the role of your brother. The environment may change suddenly, as can the tone and direction of the story. You're at a barbecue with your family on a beautiful sunny day one moment, then you go inside your house to grab something, and you're suddenly alone in Dracula's castle. One has to wonder about the areas of the brain concerned with logic and self-awareness being turned off during dreaming. Is this so that this process can go on uninterrupted? Dreams often feel profound to us, and we may even feel that way about them even after awakening, but then find that when sharing our dreams with others, they don't necessarily feel the same profundity towards our dreams that we do. You're driving around town with your friends. You notice that one of your favorite shops is closed. It was purchased by one of your other friends. They're going to sell refrigerators there now. It then begins to storm. Anyone who hears this dream might raise an eyebrow, except the dreamer, who might feel it is somehow meaningful, perhaps even deeply so. Does everyone see visual scenes in dreams? The vast majority of people do, yes. In fact, fascinatingly, there are some researchers that claim to have evidence that some people who are blind from birth may, nevertheless, experience visual stimuli in their dreams, though this is a highly disputed area. What about those with aphantasia? If told to visualize an apple in your mind, not everyone would in the same way, or even be able to at all. Some would see a lifelike image of an apple flash in their mind. Some people would see something like a rough outline of an apple. And some, those with aphantasia, roughly 3% of the population, would not be able to actually visualize an apple at all. They would be able to understand the concept perfectly fine, but they wouldn't be able to literally see it. This is not well researched, but studies seem to suggest that, yes, individuals with aphantasia do have visual dreams. Aphantasia, it appears, applies more to voluntary visualization. Women remember their dreams more often than men. Dreaming in black and white was more common when television was in black and white, but has since declined. Do animals dream? You've maybe noticed your dog twitching in their sleep, possibly lightly whimpering or growling. This is REM sleep. Their brains are going through something very similar to what ours do. Are they, therefore, dreaming like we do? It's difficult to say. Dreams are a subjective experience. Scientists can hook you and your dog up to machines that measure brain activity and study you while you sleep, but it can't be proven that you're both having the vivid, lifelike sensory experiences that define dreams in humans in the same way. REM sleep and dreaming are closely intertwined, but they are not the same thing. That being said, scientists think it's likely. If the brain activity in dogs and other animals is similar, it's reasonable to suspect the experience is as well. Dogs enter REM sleep much more quickly than humans and spend less time in it, but the activity is similar. What do dogs dream about? While they probably, like us, dream about things relevant to their daily experience, California researcher Dr. David Peña Guzman has argued that their dreams may very well not be experienced in the exact same way because we don't navigate the world in the same way. Smell, for example, is so much more important to dogs that he suspects there may be a bigger olfactory element in dog dreams. To answer this question, we reached out to an individual knowledgeable about this subject. His response was, "Oh, you heard it here first, folks." That being said, not all animals experience sleep like we do, and so it's debated how many of them dream like we do. Dogs, cats, and rats? Probably. Dolphins and birds? Maybe. Fish and insects? Perhaps not. Does what we eat affect our dreams? There has only been limited research into this question, but the answer may be, sort of. There's no proof that eating specific foods leads to specific types of dreams, but diet undoubtedly influences the mind. It could be that a healthy diet results in a happier mood and a lower frequency of bad dreams, or that eating anything that disrupts digestion and causes discomfort could lead to this discomfort manifesting in negative dreams. The jury's still out on that one. Now that we have a foundational idea of how dreaming works and what dreams tend to be like, we can ask, why do we dream? The nature of dreams and their purpose is probably something we've wondered about from our very beginnings. Some of the earliest known writings, namely the Epic of Gilgamesh, describe dreams and attribute great significance to them. From what we can tell, the ancient Sumerians, the oldest known civilization, believed dreams could be a medium through which the divine could communicate with mortals. Dreams could portend the future. They could portray events and symbols meant to guide us. There was even a Sumerian goddess of dreams, Mamu, who could appear in dreams as the messenger of the gods. Should Mamu appear in your dreams, warning you of a future dealing with a corrupt copper merchant, you'd better listen. The idea that dreams are a window into something like a world beyond our own, or the future, that they are a medium through which the divine, supernatural entities, or even the deceased may communicate with us, that they contain important warnings and messages, and therefore that one should pay attention to them and ponder their meaning. And ideas like these are likewise observed in cultures around the world throughout history, and remain alive and well to this day. This is how the ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans generally saw dreams. Indeed, each of these societies had specific sleep temples to which those suffering from a variety of illnesses could travel to undergo a kind of spiritual and medical treatment, of which oniromancy, or dream interpretation, was one important aspect. Dreams have significance in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. These religions specifically state that many dreams are merely reflections of what is on the mind, but it is also believed that there are circumstances where God will communicate through dreams. Such dreams are always important. God appears to Solomon in a dream and bestows wisdom onto him. Joseph is warned to take Mary and Jesus and flee to Egypt in a dream. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed for their country by another way. When they had departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Rise, take the child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I tell you. Herod is going to search for the child to destroy him." It is believed that dreams can also come from demons and Satan, however. If a Muslim awakes from a nightmare, one which may be a satanic dream, the Prophet Muhammad instructs them to dry spit to their left 3 times, pray, and never tell anyone about it. The Buddha's mother, Maya, is said to have had a dream that prophesied the Buddha's coming. Many Native American tribes, such as the Lakota, believed dreams could be messages from the beyond, and that specific elements within dreams had specific meaning, which was decoded by holy men. There are innumerable examples of the significance of dreams in religion and spiritual belief, but you get the picture. Could dreams be messages from the divine, the deceased, supernatural entities, or something of this nature? This is not a question which science is able to answer, and thus one which boils down to your own personal beliefs about the universe. But the point is that there is what seems to be an almost universal belief that something like this is, at least on occasion, possible. Or that dreams could otherwise be very important. They could offer revelations, guidance, warnings. We are not aware of any society that has ever believed that dreams are entirely meaningless. Emphasis on possible, though, of course. Not so many cultures think that every dream is profoundly meaningful or a message from higher powers. Dreams can be so senseless, so detached from reality, amusingly so, that we're forced to conclude that sometimes a dream is just a dream. Regardless of whether or not dreams can have spiritual significance or supernatural influence, there must be a practical aspect to them as well. It seems that the ancient Greeks were the first to investigate dreams as natural phenomena rather than purely supernatural. Aristotle argued in his treatise on dreams that, rather than messages from the gods, dreams were the natural creations of the mind that arose from lingering impressions made on the senses throughout the day. Much like a bright light leaves an impression on your vision even after you stop looking at it, he thought that the world in general left impressions on our senses and the mind, and that dreams were a sort of product of the sleeping imagination working with these leftover mental impressions. It's easy to see where he was coming from. Dreams do often relate to the activities of the prior day. In fact, even hypnagogic hallucinations in NREM1 are influenced by our daily activity. The Greek physicians Hippocrates and Galen believed that dreams were reflections of bodily health. Hippocrates thought that the soul reviewed the body during sleep, and that the state of the body was reflected in dreams, which were created by the soul. For example, the presence of monsters in dreams might indicate overindulgence in food. In the early modern era, scholars once again turned some attention to trying to understand the deeper nature and physiological origin of dreams. Greco-Roman beliefs encouraged the idea that dreams were reflections of the workings of the inner mind. Darwin's work encouraged science to view dreams as something that developed fundamentally to assist in survival. But how? Many scientists and philosophers of the 19th and early 20th centuries attempted to work this out. Two of the most famous were Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. In 1900, Freud published one of his most prominent works, Traumdeutung, or The Interpretation of Dreams. Freud believed that dreams were principally a form of wish fulfillment. The desires dreams fulfilled were those of the unconscious mind, which the conscious mind repressed in waking life, but which in sleep could slip through into the conscious mind, as the barriers between these areas were weakened in sleep. He argued that these desires were disguised through symbols and such things through a complicated process, as being outright about them would cause the dreamer to awaken, and thus disrupt sleep. Freud's goal then, as a psychoanalyst, was to analyze dream content to uncover their meanings, and thereby the repressed conflicts and desires they represented, and then to work through them to help bring stability to the mind. Jung likewise believed that dreams were a window into the unconscious, but rather than them principally being disguised wish fulfillment of repressed desires, he believed that dreams were a way for the unconscious mind to directly communicate with the conscious mind, and that they could have a number of separate purposes. For example, he thought dreams could offer guidance and important insights into one's life, and prepare the dreamer for future challenges. They could draw attention to specific issues in one's life. They could connect the conscious and the unconscious, and restore psychological balance. For example, he believed that if you were a serious and rigid person, your dreams might end up silly and absurd, to compensate for an imbalance caused by the lack of silliness and playfulness in waking life. Jung also believed that the various things portrayed in dreams could serve as symbols or metaphors. What these symbols meant could be unique to the individual, but some could be universal archetypes understood to all people, drawn from what he called the collective unconscious. Freud and Jung's ideas remained highly influential for decades and helped to move the study of dreams to science, but they didn't quite bring it to science all the way. Their explanations are sometimes considered what are called just-so stories. Their ideas may sound plausible, but they are not empirically falsifiable. Modern scientific research does not lean in their direction, though it could be argued that some of Jung's ideas are somewhat more in line with what science now suggests than Freud's. Are dreams not reflections of the inner mind? Of course they are. Dreams are centered around our waking thoughts, emotions, and experiences. To study one's dreams, especially many of them, therefore, may very well offer insight into oneself. But something like the idea that dreams are specific messages from the unconscious conveyed through a kind of symbolic code is not something that is generally supported by modern science. It could be said that modern dream research began in the mid-20th century, when our ability to understand the functioning of the brain, especially during sleep, substantially improved. In 1953, two scientists from Chicago, Eugene Oserinsky and Nathaniel Kleitman, discovered REM sleep as a distinct phase of sleep, which they soon realized was the phase most associated with dreaming. This laid the foundation for modern understanding and theories about the purpose of dreaming. To this day, there is no clear, certain answer to the question of why we dream, but there are numerous theories which are worth considering, some of which are not mutually exclusive. What exactly is going on in the brain during REM, and the other phases of sleep for that matter? We mentioned earlier that areas of the brain concerned with memory are very active during sleep, along with emotion and vision. These areas are busy doing something important. Indeed, disrupting sleep seems to impair memory, specifically because it interrupts the process of what's called memory consolidation, or the process of turning fragile, short-term memories into stable, long-term memories. This works by reactivating or replaying memories during sleep. During this process, the brain focuses not only on strengthening memories, but dividing them between what it considers important and unimportant, weakening the latter, and connecting the important parts to other existing memories. How effectively our brains remember what is actually important and discard actually unimportant things? That's a separate conversation. Fascinatingly, it appears the specific stage of sleep that is interrupted impairs different kinds of memory. The two main categories of memory are declarative, also called explicit memory, and non-declarative, also called implicit memory. There are subtypes of each of these, but we won't get into that much here. Long story short, declarative memory pertains to information that is consciously recalled, things like facts, experiences, and events. In other words, your name, the memory of the birth of your daughter, the location of Kansas on a map. These are declarative memories. They are handled more, although not entirely, during NREM 3, with important contributions during NREM 2. Non-declarative memories pertain to things that are unconsciously recalled. Things like skills, abilities, and conditioned responses that are expressed through performance which you don't necessarily have to actively think about, like playing a guitar, riding a bike, or doing gymnastics. These tend to be handled more during REM sleep, the bigger dream phase. These different types of memories involve different brain networks, which is why they aren't both done in the same phase of sleep. That being said, it is more complicated than this. There is some overlap. Some non-declarative memory is handled during NREM sleep, and, fascinatingly, REM is not exclusively focused on non-declarative memory consolidation. REM also handles the processing of emotional memories, which are part of declarative memory, for example. REM also plays a role in other areas. For example, various studies show that REM sleep enhances creativity and certain kinds of problem-solving ability. So how does all this tie into dreaming? Some, in fact, many theories propose that dreams are related to these processes, or other processes occurring in the brain during sleep. Firstly, regarding the differences in memory type each sleep phase handles, this may be why dreams in these separate phases are so different. NREM dreams may be thought-like because they are related to declarative memories, facts and events, and REM dreams may be lifelike, profound experiences because they are related to non-declarative memories pertaining to how we operate in the world, movement and skills, as well as partly handling emotionally significant declarative memories. Perhaps dreams are, in some way, helping us to consolidate memories, process information, handle emotions, and solve problems. How? Perhaps they allow us to reinforce things learned throughout the day or our recent past, to rehearse them. As everything we've just discussed would suggest, there is a wealth of proof that we perform better on tasks involving memory after we've practiced these tasks and slept rather than just practiced, even if it's the same amount of practice. Studies suggest that dreams relate more often than not to recent events and experiences in our lives. Perhaps dreams allow us to connect new memories and information to past memories and information. This could be why dreams so often involve such random elements and combinations. Your father being Abraham Lincoln, CEO of breakfast, that sort of thing. Maybe the mind is trying to play around with information and make useful, novel connections. There may be a creative problem-solving element to dreams. Maybe we dream to approach questions and challenges from a different angle. Dreams have been attributed as the source of a number of interesting ideas and revelations. Elias Howe claimed a dream helped him invent the modern sewing needle. Niels Bohr claimed to have first conceived of the structure of an atom in a dream. Dmitri Mendelov claimed he first saw the periodic table in a dream. Mary Shelley claimed her novel Frankenstein was influenced by her dreams, as were some of the works of Edgar Allan Poe. James Cameron claimed the movie The Terminator was inspired by a dream. Dreams often provoke powerful emotions, and interestingly, in REM dreams, when elements of recently experienced events are incorporated into dreams, studies suggest they provoke a stronger emotional response than other content. This might suggest REM dreams play an important role in processing emotions pertaining to memories. In 1983, famed geneticists Francis Crick and Graham Mitchinson proposed what is called reverse learning theory. They argue that dreams could be a way for the brain to prune unnecessary neural connections. But the question with theories like these is, are the dreams themselves performing these functions? It could be the case that as the brain is performing its important work during sleep, certain regions of the brain may be picking up on the signals and automatically trying to turn them into a story. There may be no actual meaning to the stories. They could just be harmless byproducts of the actual important mental processes, and we might just feel that they're meaningful because of the way the brain is working in this state. Activation synthesis theory, for example, proposed in the 1970s by J. Allen Hobson and Robert McCarley, relates to this. It proposed that dreams are the products of random signals originating in the brainstem, which the rest of the brain tries to organize into a story. This is the disappointing wet blanket possibility, but it is a compelling hypothesis. Imagine, for example, that you are lying asleep in bed with the window cracked, dreaming that you're at a restaurant with your family, celebrating your sister's birthday. Suddenly, you hear barking. You turn and see a German shepherd running around, barking throughout the restaurant, disturbing the guests. The dog then runs right up to your table and starts eating your sister's food. Just as your brother-in-law gets up to lecture the dog, you wake up and find that your neighbor's dog is barking in the real world, the exact same barking you heard in your dream. This sort of thing has happened to most. In this case, a random stimulus, a dog barking in the real world, was not only incorporated into your dream, but completely reoriented it. The story was completely altered to revolve around meaningless input. A criticism of this point is that the fact that a dream can be easily influenced by external stimuli does not prove that dreaming has no inherent purpose. There are more explanations, many of which hold that dreams do have an inherent purpose. Going back to the processing of emotional memories, in 1995, Ernest Hartman argued that dreams resemble psychotherapy in some respects, and could serve a kind of therapeutic purpose. Dreams might help us to process past experiences, namely emotionally charged ones, better connecting them to other past memories and creating new associations in a controlled, non-threatening environment. Finnish scientist Antti Revonsuo argued in a paper published in the year 2000, titled The Reinterpretation of Dreams, an Evolutionary Hypothesis on the Function of Dreaming, that dreams could be something like a computer simulation. Think of the holodeck in Star Trek. It may be that dreams developed as a way to simulate threatening, dangerous situations, to prepare us for them, and experiment with how to handle them before they happen in reality. This could be why dreams feel so lifelike. Your brain could be convincing you that you are there to appropriately plan for these situations. This could also be why dreams tend to be negative, more often than positive. You may fear, for example, being caught in an avalanche. Even if you've never seen snow, if you are merely bothered by the idea, that would be enough for the subconscious mind to register it as a threat. You may then, at some point, dream of yourself caught in one. The mind would then simulate how this situation would play out and experiment with what to do, so that if it came to pass, you would already be subconsciously prepared for how to handle it. This is called threat simulation theory. It sounds entirely plausible. In waking life, we train and plan for threatening situations which could possibly transpire in the future. Why not in sleep? One issue with this theory is that not all dream content pertains to threatening situations, nor is it even all negative. As mentioned, dreams do lean in a negative direction, but certainly not always. This idea has been expanded over the years, however. Scientists have argued that dreams could prepare us not merely for threatening scenarios, but a variety of different experiences. Social simulation theory, for example, proposes that dreams prepare us for social experiences and allow us to rehearse our social skills. But if dreams are meant to be simulations of reality, why does the brain not prevent them from being fantastic and nonsensical? How might you respond to an avalanche in a dream? Very simple. Just teleport away. Furthermore, what of dreams that are not only surreal, but emotionally neutral? Dreams in which the dreamer doesn't seem to be rehearsing anything or facing a challenge, but is merely flying in the sky or exploring a new room in their own home. Another theory is continual activation theory, proposed by Chinese scientist Ji Zhang in 2004, which argues that the brain must be continuously active, and therefore generates activity to avoid shutting down, of which dreams would be a product. The list of potential explanations continues. many of them slight variations of the ideas we have thus far described. As mentioned, dreams could serve multiple purposes, especially given that we have different types of dreams. Scientific studies have provided evidence that supports some of these theories, but it remains a challenge to definitively prove any of them. Perhaps further insight into dreams can be gained by looking at what happens when dreaming gets strange. You slowly awaken in your bed at night, transitioning from a dream to consciousness. As soon as you become just slightly aware of yourself and your surroundings, however, you are hit with the realization that you can't move. Your body is entirely frozen. You are confused and don't understand why. It is a deeply uncomfortable, disturbing feeling. It's hard to breathe. You begin to panic, and that is when you see it. A figure, in the shape of a man but without features, like a shadow, hovering over your bed. Though it is without eyes, you can feel its gaze upon you. You want so very much to cry out, to run, to escape, but the figure has you under some supernatural control. You don't understand what's happening. Then, suddenly, the figure is gone, and you are able to move and breathe freely, as though nothing had ever stopped you. This is an example of what it can be like to experience what's called sleep paralysis. We mentioned earlier that when you undergo REM sleep, your body paralyzes you so that you don't act out your dreams. It is possible to become semi-conscious with this paralysis still in effect, and enter into a unique state halfway between dreaming and wakefulness. Hallucinations are not a requisite of sleep paralysis. Some people merely wake up, perhaps they don't even open their eyes, and, with vague awareness, realize that they cannot move, then go back to sleep. However, experiences where dreams and the waking world blend, and people see, hear, feel, and otherwise experience a number of unusual, otherworldly things are common, especially for those who experience sleep paralysis on a regular basis. Unlike dreams, it can be hard to dismiss and forget these often terrifying experiences. Without awareness of what is happening, the sufferer may be inclined to believe that these experiences are entirely real. We have a side series on this channel called Campfire, in which we review reports of interactions with the paranormal, generally paranormal entities, extraterrestrials, ghosts, cryptids, supernatural creatures, etc. It is extremely common in these stories, both in those of today and throughout history, for the subjects to wake up in the night, find themselves unable to move, and then to notice that an entity like one of those mentioned is in the room with them, maybe even carrying them away into a ship or something of that nature. Of course, not every single ostensible encounter with the paranormal can be explained as a sleep paralysis dream, but Occam's razor would hold that this state of being half awake, half dreaming that so many are liable to enter throughout the night is clearly responsible for a very significant chunk of paranormal encounter reports and stories. Indeed, this seems to be the origin of the word nightmare. Mare was a term that, in pre-modern times, referred to a kind of demon or goblin that would manifest near where people were sleeping and torment them, often sitting on their chests, preventing them from breathing. Pressure on the chest and trouble breathing being common symptoms reported during sleep paralysis. We can see this visualized in paintings such as this one, where we have a woman sleeping in a completely normal position, suffering the presence of a mare in her sleep. It was not until the 18th or 19th century that the word was extended to refer to any bad dream. It's hard to know how common it is, but perhaps a third of the population experiences sleep paralysis at least once in their lives, and perhaps 5 to 10% of people experience it on a regular basis. While thoroughly unpleasant and frightening, it is generally not harmful, and typically the experience is over within just a few minutes. Why does sleep paralysis happen? Like so many questions about sleep, there isn't a completely certain answer. Certain disorders such as PTSD and narcolepsy can cause it, though it often, in fact, usually occurs without the presence of any other disorder. It seems that even simple things, such as disrupted sleep and stress alone, can cause it. Interestingly, however, family and twin studies suggest that there is a genetic component to the susceptibility of experiencing it. What about an opposite scenario? Is it possible to lose this paralysis, REM atonia, during dreaming? There you are, June 18th, 1815, the Battle of Waterloo. You are a British soldier, arranged in an infantry square, fending off the French cavalry swarming around you. As you are reloading your musket, a cavalryman flies off his horse and lands directly on you. You cry out in anger and enter into a struggle with him, when suddenly, your wife appears in your dream next to you and asks what on earth you're doing. You then awaken to find yourself standing on your bed, grappling with a foe that isn't there. While the idea of acting out one's dreams may seem amusing, incidents like the one described here do happen, and for those who deal with this situation on a regular basis, they are anything but amusing. Such situations quickly become quite dangerous to the sleeper and those around them. Remember that most dreams are negative, many of which are violent or frightening. We mentioned that classic sleepwalking does not occur in REM sleep and is not typically associated with dreaming. But there is a separate sleepwalking disorder called REM sleep behavior disorder, or RBD, where sleepwalkers are generally very much acting out their dreams. This occurs when, for one reason or another, something disrupts the brainstem's ability to inhibit movements during REM, and so nothing prevents the dreamer from acting out their dreams. The movements that can be experienced range from simple twitches to very complex behaviors, exactly matching what the dreamer is doing in the dream. Someone may have a lifelike conversation with a character in their dream. They may perform a dance. Because of the negative nature of REM dreams, sufferers will often scream, yell, and become violent. It can be difficult to distinguish NREM3 sleepwalking from REM sleepwalking. Standard NREM3 sleepwalkers have also been known to do these things as well, along with behaviors such as cooking food, driving, and even climbing cranes in their sleep. While subtle aspects of the sleepwalking, like the time of night it happens, the age of onset, and dream recallability may distinguish them, typically a sleep study is required to confirm which a sleepwalking individual is suffering from. Standard sleepwalking can be equally dangerous, but it is not necessarily a sign of a deeper issue. RBD often is. RBD is found in roughly 1% of the population, most of whom are male and elderly. Various things, such as narcolepsy, can cause it, but it can develop without a known cause. In such cases, however, there is a high chance that one will go on to later develop what is called a synucleinopathy. Synucleinopathies are a category of diseases that include Parkinson's disease, dementia with Lewy bodies, and multiple system atrophy. Going back to the question of what animal dreams might be like, it is possible for animals to experience RBD, or something like it, and when they do, they also enact behaviors similar to waking life, providing a window into what they may dream about. Narcolepsy is another condition which arises from issues associated with REM sleep. There are two types of narcolepsy, Type 1 and Type 2. Type 1 is defined primarily by the symptoms of excessive daytime sleepiness and cataplexy. Cataplexy, also called drop attacks, refers to sudden, brief periods of muscle weakness or paralysis while conscious. Often for those with narcolepsy type 1, this is brought on by intense emotions. Generally, this tends to affect only the face and neck, but can cause total bodily paralysis. The reason that this happens, and that it is related to this conversation, is that it is caused by a lack of a neuropeptide called orexin, also called hypocretin, in the brain. Orexin is important in regulating arousal and suppressing REM sleep. In essence, because of this imbalance, the brain mistakenly activates REM paralysis in the middle of wakefulness. As we have seen, this disorder not only disrupts wakefulness, but also sleep, with sufferers also being sensitive to many parasomnias because of the unique way in which their sleep is disrupted. Both RBD and narcolepsy can be highly disruptive to daily life. There is no cure for either, but they can both be treated relatively well. That being said, narcolepsy in particular is difficult to diagnose. This is because the condition is relatively rare, symptoms can be subtle, and the disease can be easily mistaken for a number of other disorders, or it can even be comorbid with another disorder that a patient does have. As a result, there is often a gap of years in between symptom onset and diagnosis. There is another state one may enter associated with REM, this one more pleasant than the former three. Is it possible to become conscious while still fully immersed in a dream? To, in essence, consciously navigate a dream, and possibly even take control of it? Yes, this is called lucid dreaming. The ability to control one's own dreams has been commented upon for millennia, but interest in the subject took off in the 19th century, alongside general scientific interest in dreams. In 1867, French sonologist and oneirologist Marie-Jeanne Léon Lecoq published the book Dreams and the Way to Direct Them, Practical Observations, in which he describes his experiences controlling his dreams and instructs the reader on how to do so themselves. The term lucid dream was coined in 1913 by the Dutch psychiatrist Frederik van Eeden in his paper titled A Study of Dreams. How does one lucid dream? While it is possible for anyone to spontaneously experience a lucid dream, generally, those who are interested in having them must focus on a variety of methods to trigger awareness in a dream. A famous example, among a number of methods, is called reality checking. The idea is to repeatedly perform or observe something throughout your day that would easily become distorted in a dream. One might check their watch repeatedly throughout the day and ask themselves if they are dreaming, in the hope that this behavior will be repeated in a dream, as our waking behaviors tend to be. When one then, in their dream, looks at their watch and asks themselves if they are dreaming and sees something absurd or surreal, as information like the time on a watch is often not consistent or realistic in dreams, this then may trigger the realization that one is in a dream and activate a kind of self-awareness, which then allows the dreamer to take control of the dream. For a time, there was skepticism about this. Are people actually taking control of their dreams, or are they merely conditioning the mind to have dreams in which they are convinced they are conscious, but in truth are not? The subjective nature of dreams made this question difficult to answer, but researchers have nevertheless been able to make significant progress in answering it. In 1975, British psychologist Dr. Keith Hearn instructed a lucid dreamer, Alan Worsley, to perform a specific set of eye movements when he realized that he was in a lucid dream. Around 8 a.m., Worsley performed the prearranged movements as instructed, while verifiably in REM sleep, which was measured on an electroocculogram. Further research has been conducted on lucid dreaming in the years since, validating its reality, though many aspects of it remain debated and uncertain. How do lucid dreams affect sleep quality and waking psychology, for example? This appears ultimately unknown. There is one more area which must be addressed. Prophetic dreams. Precognition. Have you ever had something occur to you in waking life, which you felt, or were even certain, was something of which you had not long before dreamed? In other words, is it possible that dreams could, sometimes, portray the future? If not, why do so many feel so strongly that such a thing is possible? There are a number of practical explanations for this phenomenon that can be invoked before looking into ESP. One is that the subconscious mind may sometimes be better at predicting what is coming than the conscious mind. You dream one night that your daughter is pregnant. Within the week, your daughter announces her pregnancy. Proof of extrasensory perception? Or is a simpler explanation that it's a reasonable assumption that your recently married daughter, who has always wanted kids, would soon be pregnant a few months after her wedding, and that you simply subconsciously realized this and picked up on cues about it without consciously realizing it. Another is self-fulfilling prophecies. You dream of a chocolate milkshake at night, wake up the following morning, forget your dream, go about your day, then, after work, spontaneously decide to stop by the ice cream store. Then, halfway through your shake, you stand up, jump onto the table, and scream in the middle of the store, "Wait a minute, this is that of which I have yesternight dreamt." Precognition? Or did the dream put you in the mood for it, even if you forgot about it consciously? A third could be a kind of confirmation bias. One can interpret their dreams however they want. With determination, one could link any dream they have to something that happens in the future. Last night, one dreamt of an elephant. The following evening, there was a thunderstorm. Both elephants and thunderstorms are intimidating and loud. Precognition? If one can consistently, demonstrably predict thunderstorms based on their dreams alone, that would be interesting. But if it's a post hoc interpretation, the issue is that no such interpretation could ever be empirically disproven. We can keep going with the numerous alternative explanations for what one might assume to be precognition, but the question remains, is it possible that the human mind could somehow perceive events before they happen? And is there something about the dreaming process that makes this more likely to happen during dreams? Many people around the world have personal or family stories of having had a dream which was eerily similar to a very specific event that later transpired. Some incidents like this have been public and verifiable. What is to be made of such unnerving cases? It is true that scientific understanding of the human mind is still quite limited. We don't actually fully understand how the mind works, nor do we know the full extent of its capabilities. But that being said, if something like this were possible, it should be possible to definitively prove it empirically. Who knew that the 8 if you're lucky, hour period in which you lie dormant at night could be so complicated? Whether you're simulating experiences, reinforcing memories, lucid dreaming, or seeing the future, we wish you sweet dreams, and we hope you enjoyed this video. If so, we invite you to come check out the rest of Fire of Learning, and to subscribe to see more videos like this in the future. In case YouTube did not notify you, here are the videos we have made so far this year. To support the channel further, there is a link to our Patreon in the description. A special thanks to our current supporters, once again listed here. Thank you for watching.